All right, the Xbox Game Showcase 2025 just wrapped up, and they did have quite a bit to announce here. And I figured what I would do right now is go back and pick out some of the highlights, some of the bigger announcements, at least from my perspective. And then tomorrow in Newswave, I'll go over everything that was announced line by line, along with Summer Game Fest and some other stories. So tomorrow's show is going to be quite packed, actually, with game releases, announcements, information, the whole thing. So make sure you tune into that tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. But for now, let's talk about this Xbox Games Showcase. So if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if you're new. Now, fortunately, Microsoft and their Xbox account did put out this little graphic here. So this actually makes things very, very easy. Now, I do also have just a full recording and stuff of the show that I can put up here as we go as well. But this does kind of put everything into perspective here, just how much stuff was announced. And that's the thing I'll give Microsoft credit for, at least the past few years now, is their shows are pretty quick and to the point, as in it's trailer to trailer to trailer to trailer. Then you might have like 30 seconds to a minute of a person talking about something or just the vision of Xbox or whatever, then on to trailer, 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 back to back to back to back. They had a little more talking this time, where we saw Sarah Bond, Phil Spencer, and Matt Booty all in the show, but they did at least have some purpose. Specifically, I'd say Phil Spencer and obviously Sarah Bond, who talked about hardware here. Oh, and I guess before we start here, we should mention, yes, there were PlayStation 5 logos all over this presentation. Not necessarily for every single announcement, but they were plentiful. You could basically look at it and go, okay, there's most likely a PS5 logo going to show up here, and you'd be right more times than not. However, that's just kind of how Microsoft's been approaching things. They've been pretty upfront about that. They're just thinking about getting as much revenue as possible and take some of the focus off of their specific walled-off hardware and just blow it up to where it's Xbox Play Anywhere. This is an Xbox, that's an Xbox, and that's just kind of how they're rolling. So in a way, you could kind of look at this as just another sort of mini E3 presentation, I guess, just for everyone, like a generalized presentation. Although not a lot of Switch 2 logos here. Really, one maybe later on. So not a lot there, but I still think it's worth waiting for Nintendo's Direct that basically everyone expects to happen in June before you get too concerned there. Outer Worlds 2 is clearly like their big game that they're pushing for this showcase. It led off the event, and then they're also doing like pretty extensive deep dive on the game with the showcase having just wrapped up, and that's going on right now. So I'll look into that a bit more. But Outer Worlds 2, what I'm expecting going into Outer Worlds 2 is honestly just Outer Worlds 1 just kind of built out a bit more, right? So that's what it looks like. I'd say it looks better than Outer Worlds 1, obviously, but that's kind of what I'm expecting there, and I enjoyed it, so I feel like I'll probably enjoy Outer Worlds 2 as well. High on Life 2 is one that I was not expecting to be here. I was trying to think of like when that game came out. I mean, I guess it's been a couple of years now, but it's a little surprising to see it all of a sudden pop up again, just now with a sequel for it. That's coming out this winter even, so that's, again, sooner than expected. Now, winter can still be in 2026, of course. Maybe it's like early 2026, but that still feels like a pretty quick turnaround for a game like that. And I'll tell you, I like the game, but it's definitely not going to be for everyone with the kind of humor it has to it. Kind of that Rick and Morty style humor, I guess. Then they talked about the handhelds. Okay. I'm still trying to figure this one out. And because in my initial thought with the handhelds would be, okay, Microsoft wants to really work on the software side. So partner up with, say, Asus in this case, have them develop the handheld while you work specifically on the software so that a year or two down the road, you then come up with your own handheld that's in-house, it's going to be pushing a lot of the newer features forward that you have with your big Xbox Play Anywhere initiative. But then we hear news that they are putting that on hold and it's just all software now. So we have the ROG Ally X or the ROG Xbox Ally X and then the ROG Xbox Ally. So two different versions. We've gone over both of them pretty extensively because they did leak out ahead of time. We don't have anything about pricing on this. And even like battery apparently is something that's kind of kept under wraps right now, as some previews were going live as this event was happening from different outlets. And it seemed... to me, it seems just like a ROG Ally, just with some more Xbox and Windows integration with that Xbox button. And I think it's going to use the newer AMD chipset as well, the Extreme Z2. Again, still a lot of questions that we have here. And, you know, what the biggest one's going to be, obviously, is price point, because that is definitely a very sensitive part of the whole thing here. Because The Ally X is $800, and based on the specs they showed, I don't know how much cheaper this one's going to be than that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that turns out. I guess it has access at least to all of your current games that, for the most part, right, that are on PC and that are part of that Xbox Play Anywhere application. But they did, funny enough, put a launch game alongside of it. So we do know that Hollow Knight Silksong is coming out this year, and it is releasing alongside of either of these handheld devices. So that's a launch title, I guess, for them. I know it's coming out on other platforms, obviously, but that is going to be a Game Pass title there day one, and they're going to put it right next to their handhelds. So that's a game that will run very well in those handhelds, and if they have higher refresh screens, like I assume they do, that's a game that'll fit in nicely there with, say, 120 FPS. We had Game Freak show up, which was so funny. Seeing their logo pop up here at an Xbox event, I'm sure confused some people. But of course, Game Freak can do what they want. They're not owned by Nintendo. Okay, they're part of the Pokemon company, but that's more just like a collaborative company between them and Nintendo and Creatures. But in this case, they are making a game called Beast of Reincarnation, and it looks good. Like, visually speaking, you would not put this next to Scarlet and Violet and be like, oh yeah, obviously it's the same studio that made both of those. No, this looks great in terms of the visual style. Now, I don't know about the gameplay or kind of the concept of it necessarily, how that'll turn out, but it does indeed show you that, yes, Game Freak can create good looking games. So you don't have to necessarily be like, well, what are they going to do? It's Game Freak when it comes to Pokemon. No, they can do it. That is coming out 2026, however, so interesting. Keep an eye on that one. Clockwork Revolution. To me, looking up and down the list, I think this might be my game of the show here. I think it looked awesome. Now, when they started it, I looked and said, okay, reminds me a bit of BioShock Infinite, but then they kept going. That might just be the steampunk look in general, because the more they showed, the more it kind of just became its own thing, sort of. And it's from inXile, and we've seen this game before, not like this though, where like they showed a lot with the game. The gameplay, different elements to it, character customization. Well, you're also changing out weapons and crafting them or just adding on to those. But then they get to a point where they're talking about time manipulation. So you're rewinding time, you're freezing, you're putting bullets back in like chambers of guns for enemies. So they're talking about like this affect the past and the future. And I don't know, that all of a sudden had this whole other dynamic come into play as I'm watching this happen. But it seemed like you're going to be a thief robbing from rich people or something. So I think they still need to flesh out some of the story, or at least the idea of it there. But they say it's coming in due time, which I saw that I said, ooh, okay, we're still, I think, a ways off from this, probably at least maybe a year or more out from this. But man, inXile they got something here. I am quite interested to see how that one turns out. I'm going to jump ahead. Again, there's a lot of stuff that will be going into Newswave tomorrow. I want to jump ahead to Square Enix. They did show up here. Nate had that as part of his predictions, but Square Enix did show up here. Okay, Final Fantasy VII Intergrade is going to the Xbox in the winter. All right, so it seems like that, alongside of I guess the Switch 2, it's just coming out there from Square Enix as they're moving it to multiple platforms, which isn't surprising considering that's their strategy in general now, especially just multi-platform push. All right, so seeing that, but then also Final Fantasy 16 is going to Xbox, and in fact, it's available today. It's not available today in Game Pass, however, and I think that I'm wondering how that's going to go over with people, because those shadow drops are really good when it's like, oh, it's a shadow drop and it's on Game Pass, so you can get it right now. But Final Fantasy 16, I think is a good game. I enjoyed it. The boss battles are crazy over the top. They say it's the complete edition, so I have to look into that a bit more, because it has like the DLC with it as well. That'd be kind of cool. I mean, I recommend it. I like Final Fantasy 16. I'm also interested to see if it runs better on the Xbox than it does on the PlayStation 5, just because maybe they have more time to optimize it or something there. We haven't seen a patch that I know for the PS5 Pro with Final Fantasy 16, so it's kind of brute forced by the PS5 Pro, whereas here, maybe they developed it a bit more with the Xbox Series X in mind, and just, again, more time to optimize it. So I'll be curious to see some of those comparisons. We had Double Fine show up, and look, Double Fine shows up when things get really weird, and it did. So when they were showing this, it looked like you just play as a lighthouse, and there's a bird on top of the lighthouse that I guess helps you do things in like the world for puzzles and stuff, and it definitely has that distinct Double Fine art style to it. It's not the next Psychonauts game, which is fine. I mean, you kind of expect Double Fine to go off and do weird things, but I could see them also having another game that they're working on alongside of this one. So we'll see. This is, again, coming out this year, actually October 17th, so not too far off. We had the closeout game that was completely expected. Before this even started, I figured Call of Duty would close the show out. However, before that happened, Phil Spencer said something. Next year is the 25th anniversary for Xbox. Of course, it released in 2001, that holiday, and it was a magical time when the original Xbox came out, specifically, though, when Halo released. And I had mentioned this before a while ago, that the idea would be celebrate the 25th anniversary with some sort of new Halo release. And he definitely hinted at that idea. So he's essentially saying, hey, next year, 25 years in 2026 at the end of the year, of course. And we are looking to have a new Forza game, a new Fable game, a new Gears of War game, right? Of course, we have Gears E-Day coming up. So you have Gears, Forza, Fable, and what's the game that he mentioned that would be from a franchise from the beginning that's getting a new entry next year? Well, that would be Halo. And I'm kind of thinking now that the idea would be a Halo 1 remaster or remake like we've heard previously, maybe done in Unreal Engine, and that would be one of the big ways for them to cap off their 25th anniversary, and maybe it comes out towards the end of the year for 25 years of Xbox. Maybe they do a special edition system or controller or something, big celebration, and I think that would make a lot of sense. So I kind of feel like that's what he was hinting at there, at least with that phrase of an old franchise getting a new entry next year that's been with us from the beginning. They closed out with Call of Duty Black Ops 7. Not shocking, it's been rumored for some time. It's their most successful title every year at this point, so naturally, it'll close things out. They tried to play it off like it wasn't a Call of Duty game at first, the way they were showing it, but then they kind of had the glass crack, go into almost another universe, and there you go, it's Call of Duty. So, I played through the Call of Duty Black Ops games in the franchise. I'm not super deep into the lore or anything, but I'm sure Call of Duty fans were happy to see it, although I'm sure they were also expecting it. The Black Ops thing is funny. We just had Black Ops 6, going right to Black Ops 7. It sells for them, so I guess in their mind, let's do it again. Although I would like to see them then jump around a bit more with Call of Duty rather than just do Black Ops every year, and I don't know, maybe that's their strategy for next year. Hey, you can put it on the calendar, pencil it in. New Call of Duty game next year, we'll see if they get away from Black Ops or if we just get Black Ops 8. But that was, for the most part, those are the highlights. As I mentioned, there were still a bunch of other things in here. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4 has a demo that's out today that I'll have to check out. And of course, Persona 4 Revival, we didn't really get much other information than that. I was kind of wondering if that would be a shadow drop or at least a release date that's not too far off, but no, they just wishlist it now. It's coming at some point. So there were some loose ends to only be tied up with some of these announcements, but for the most part, I thought it was a pretty good show. Like, overall, it was quick and to the point. We saw trailer after trailer after trailer with the occasional pop-in of Matt Booty Sarabon or Phil Spencer. I think if there was a closeout that wasn't Call of Duty, so let's say Phil goes into the speech and he's like, oh yeah, the return of a franchise from the beginning, and then they show Halo Remastered to close out. That would have then pushed it to solid, I'll say B+. Let me know what you guys think about all of this down below with this showcase. I'll also have a poll up later on where you can vote and say exactly where you think this showcase falls with a letter grade. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.